trying to figure that out like the hard way because I'm kind of stubborn and hard-headed. So there wasn't any taking other people's dating advice or whatever. I was going to do my own thing. And I learned a whole lot of lessons. And with those lessons and sort of interacting in single mom communities, and sharing those lessons, I realized that like I have something to contribute from all the struggles that I went through. And so that's what I've been doing.
Well, you know, I love the expression, our struggles are definitely our biggest teachers. So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of us here feel like we should be experts in relationships at this stage. But yeah, I'm really fascinated by attachment styles as well. So interesting. And yeah, does anyone else here know about attachment styles? If you raise your hand, maybe just to see who's aware of it. It's really, really fascinating, and it makes so much sense. So maybe we could start there, just a little for, you know, just a little refresher course for those of us who know a little bit about it, and maybe just a little insight into those who might not.
Yeah. So basically there are 4 attachment styles. I sort of view them as like on a continuum or on a graph instead of like 4 distinct categories. And so basically we form an attachment to our primary caregiver, our parent, whoever raised us and spent the most time with us as a baby. And so in that connection, in that relationship, they either attend to our needs effectively in a way that calms and soothes our nervous system, or they don't necessarily do that effectively. And the ineffectiveness can sort of look like either not attending to your needs very often, and that results in a specific attachment style, which I'll get into. Attending to your needs well sometimes and not so well other times. And then sort of very erratically attending to your needs. And then there's also sort of over attending to your needs as well, which is sort of difficult to do with a baby, but as you get older, you can definitely over attend to your kids' needs. And so what that does is if the parent is effective and attends to needs in a balanced, healthy way, you grow up with a secure attachment style. And it's easier to get into relationships. It's easier to relate to people. It's easier to not take things personally. If they interact with you in a way that is mostly emotionally neglectful, a lot of times parents are physically present, but they're emotionally neglectful, then that normally, not always, but normally results in an avoidant attachment style, because you learn how to take care of your own emotional needs by yourself, but also learning that your needs don't matter. And sometimes that you don't matter. It depends on how you internalize that. And then if they're sort of erratic, it can go either way with the, you can get the anxious attachment style. I know I myself have an anxious attachment style, although on the continuum, I'm very close to secure. But I used to be very, very, very anxious. Oh, thank you. And then, so that anxious attachment style, I also see with a lot of my clients, is that feeling of always, well, I mean, it's anxious, right? You are curious about where your partner is. You feel like you have to know what they're doing. And if you don't know what they're doing, it feels very unsafe. And that shows up. Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, is it true? Well, I think it must be that different kind of people bring out different versions of your attachment style that you might kind of flip between.
Yes.
Like
yes.
Dynamic, trigger.
Yeah.
Or.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you have a more, the fourth one is fearful attachment where you sort of have both anxious and avoidant tendencies. And so it's, if you meet someone who's more anxious, that will bring out your more avoidant tendencies. And if you meet someone who's more avoidant, that'll bring out your anxious tendencies.
I think I
but
might be that one. I think
the
that
fearful,
yeah.
yeah. Well, that's why they say it's a continuum,
Mm.
right? Because I err on the side of anxious, but I've definitely been avoidant.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
it's funny.
yeah.
And when you know more about it, you kind of recognize certain patterns. And actually, when other friends talk to me about, you know, if they're dating and things like that, it's like, you know, okay, they're avoidant, you're anxious, like, you know, this is the dance that's going on. It's just interesting. You can kind of see it. But I know that you have, that you have a kind of presentation or something. So I don't want to jump the gun and start asking you lots of questions that we're interested in when you might already be covering it. So yeah, you just,
Okay.
do
Because I'm open to
do.
just a bunch of questions. That's fine too.
Yeah.
But I did have it.
Oh, I was just going to say, if anyone has any questions, and I think people do, because there was some in the meetup. There was some in the meetup chat and on the feed today. But yeah, feel free to just pop your questions into the comments at any time, and so that Brianna and I can see them and try and cover them in the session or at the end. So yeah, definitely feel free to ask questions, get as much out of session as possible.
Yeah, I saw that Ryan just asked a question. What about the caretaker or enabler? A lot of times, well, I've seen it different ways, but a lot of times there's an anxious caregiver. If there's an anxious caregiver, they will either be so anxious that they raise an avoidant child, or they will sort of pass down their anxious tendencies to the child. So that can definitely happen. All right. Am I able to? Oh, yay. Okay. Let me get it to present. Oh, wait. That's not going to work. Let me see.
I'll just chat to the crowd in the meantime. How is everyone this evening? Has everyone had a good day? Bad day? Getting through the week? Hanging in there? Yeah. Nodding heads, a few smiles.
It's been a glorious week, except for the rain.
Good. Except for what?
The rain.
The rain, I know. Yeah, it had. Where are you, Dan?
I'm right down on the south coast, so in between Portsmouth and Brighton.
Oh, lovely. Okay, I'm in London. Yeah, it has been. Today was crazy, actually. Yeah.
Turned cold.
Yeah.
It turned cold, and I got caught out by the rain. It was sunny when I went out, and decided to go for a bit of a walk at lunch. Got about 2 miles away from the office, and then the heavens opened.
And no umbrella. Classic.
Yeah.
Always the way. Murphy's Law. Okay, Brianna, it looks like you are good to go.
Yes. As soon as I minimize. Okay. Wait, did that stop the share? You guys still see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Oh, do you see the whole thing?
So see a cover screen saying, "Hey, I'm Brie."
And then you can see the bottom part too.
I can see just a white. It looks like the front of a presentation. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. In that case, I'm Brie. You know, we've already done introductions, but I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I'm also a dating coach. So today I want to talk to you guys about dating with confidence and clarity. And so I'm going to go through this quickly because I feel like I'm just getting a vibe of lots of questions. So I want to give time for that. And so I'm going to go over the 3 C's: connection, clarity, and choice. Also, you guys might hear some snoring. I've got my partner on FaceTime. I know if I hang up, it'll make a loud noise and he needs to sleep. So just over there in the corner. But yeah, anyway. So connection. All right. Oh, my slide is missing the title. So this is about where you may have lost connection with yourself. Okay, so we talked about attachment styles, right?
Bree,
Hang on, are you sharing anything?
Yeah,
It's
just to
really
give you the heads
your
up,
face.
we can still just see the cover screen. Can't see any slides saying connection.
Okay, I think I know what the problem is.
Yeah, it's always slightly scary trying to, but there you go.
Okay, there we go. Yes. All right. So, you may have lost connection with yourself. Okay, actually, let me give a little brief thing about connection. So a lot of times when we have trouble dating with confidence or just trouble dating in general, we're lacking a connection with ourselves and we're seeking connection with others to fill the void that the missing connection with ourselves has left. And so that's how we get into those anxious avoidant relationships where you might be the anxious chaser and then there's the avoidant runner, and it's just a whole mess. I've been in several of those. And then you also may just avoid dating because you know that like something is missing, and you keep having these negative experiences and you don't necessarily know what to do to change them. So the first step is always, always, always to connect with yourself. But you may have lost that connection, and knowing where you lost it can help you figure out how to then regain it. You may have lost it during childhood or infancy. With that attachment style, you may have an anxious attachment style or a fearful attachment style or an avoidant attachment style. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just what you make of it and how you use it to inform how you interact with people in the future, and yourself, honestly. Like, a lot of times there's shame associated with our attachment style. Like I used to feel very shameful. I used to think I was crazy, all that stuff, just because I was experiencing this intense anxiety around relationships. But I learned that there's nothing wrong with that. It's just something, it's showing me what needed to be healed. Okay. You may have been gaslit by a parent, by a teacher, by a friend, or someone else you trusted during childhood or adolescence. That breaks your connection to yourself. So like when I was a kid, actually still, I had a lot of food allergies. And whenever I would tell people about it, they would tell me I'd be dramatic, to just eat the food anyway, and things like that. And so that seems like a small thing, but that made me feel like I was overreacting to a very real experience in my body. And so that I lost connection with myself because of that. Same thing, gaslighting, emotional abuse, manipulation by an ex.
Bree, sorry
yes.
to interrupt. Daphne has just asked if you could define gaslighting.
Yes. So gaslighting is when someone, usually deliberately, but it's not always on purpose, when they belittle or deny your experience. So a common one is if someone is like, did it happen to me today? Yeah. So I was asking my kid's dad to sign a document today, a parental contract or whatever. And he's not very active in my kids' lives. He talks to them maybe twice a week on a video call. And he said that he wanted to add something in there about not introducing anyone to the kids until we're engaged. And so I told him that felt like he was trying to control my decisions and that he didn't trust my decisions. And instead of just addressing that, because I worded it as a question, instead of addressing that, he didn't answer the question. And then later on, he completely denied that he even like asked for what he asked for. And so that denial, that's gaslighting. Him denying that he said something in order to make me rethink my own truth, that's gaslighting. Okay. And
sorry, I was
so
going to say making out like someone is crazy, and
exactly
making them kind of question reality.
Yeah, question reality and question their own sense of
Experience.
reality. Like that's where the disconnection happens, because you're like, that definitely happened, but someone that you trust is telling you it didn't. And so now you can't trust yourself. If you choose to trust the other person, you can't trust yourself. You can't do both at the same time.
Thank you.
Because they're denying your experience. Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. And then after an unrelated traumatic event that may have just like given your whole system a shake, and you just feel like you can't connect with people. That's what trauma does sometimes. And so it may have nothing to do with relationships, nothing to do with interpersonal relationships, but when our nervous system is just in fight or flight or freeze or fawn, then it's difficult to connect with people and connect with ourselves. Okay. All right. So I want to know from you all, where do you think you may have lost connection with yourself? Just let me know in the comments, or if you want to unmute.
I feel like this will be really interesting to see how English and Irish people connect with this kind of question compared to, you're probably used to, because you're in the States and, it's probably quite different culturally, but it would be, hopefully people feel like this is a safe space, which it is. I'm sure we've all experienced versions of it. So in the comments, trauma and gaslighting. Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah, and I'll say I personally, all four of those, I can give you at least one example for all four of the things that I listed.
Mine is from childhood and relationships.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else?
Not understanding the difference between compromise and concession.
Yeah, that's a big one. That'll definitely have you losing connection with yourself in the name of like doing this for someone else, but making yourself smaller and smaller.
Until you are nothing.
Yeah. Yes, lots of gaslighting. I was gaslit for like 7 years, and then once the glasses came off, I was like, oh my gosh, who am I? What is life?
Yeah.
I think for me, it was geographical isolation. So I was living in New Zealand. So I was as far away as humanly possible from my friends and family and home. So, and then being gaslit by my son's dad with none of me around me. It was really hard. So I had to come home to rebuild that connection to myself again.
Yeah, wow. That's huge. And that distance piece makes a lot of sense, not being around you said more of you, I believe. I love the way you put it. Yeah, that makes a huge difference.
For me, I think the trauma of childbirth, because I had pretty bad childbirth, sparked previous traumas that I thought I had dealt with. And I didn't realize the big impact it sort of had on my relationships, because it's from that point where I started to realize things, and you just don't realize it until afterwards how much of an impact it can have on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times there's this idea that like, okay, once you've healed the trauma, that's it. But what I've seen in my work and what I've seen, or what I've heard from my healing team, I have a healing team. I see an acupuncturist, I have a therapist, I have like, what do I call them? older therapists, more experienced therapists who I consult with to help me do my job better. And my acupuncturist put it as trauma, or not trauma, but healing is a spiral, right? It's not like a linear thing, or even like, it's not on a graph. It's a circular spiral, and you keep coming back to the same things, but you're a little bit higher every single time. Sorry about the lighting. It's the sun behind me. Okay. But yeah, you come back to the same things and you've healed a little bit, and then, you know, it still might hurt, and then you come back again, you've healed a little bit. And that helps when you do have those moments of feeling it again when you thought it was over, you know, recognizing I have healed some of it, and you know, you've done the work. It's just lifelong work sometimes. Being told I was certain things, or had, oh my gosh, yes, had certain traits as a child. Yes, Rachel, yes. I can relate to them deeply. On the positive and the negative side of things, right? You can be told that you're negative things as a child, and then that sits with you. And then you can be told you're positive things as a child. And then when you grow up and you're not those things, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm bad, I'm terrible.
I think another one that's also quite a pinnacle one in a similar vein is around boundaries and being able to confidently and comfortably set boundaries.
Yes, yeah, and we'll actually get into that a bit here in this presentation, because that's super key when dating. Being able to set boundaries, knowing where your boundaries are in the first place, and then having the courage to set them. Those are some huge challenges if you're not used to setting them, especially, you know, as you said, with the compromise versus concession. If you err on the side of concession, like boundaries are like, no, I can do this, even though you know that you need it.
I do now, didn't at the time.
Yes. Okay. Trauma and gaslighting also for me. I've come from a really religious and culturally dense environment, so that itself was traumatic. Yes, definitely. Having a child and then becoming a single mother was also, yes. Had to choose to cut off relationships and focus on myself and my son, relearn my own values and norms, but so worth it. Yes, good for you, Millie. Oh, thank you for sharing. And Sam says, childhood for me, I think made me feel unworthy, accept bad behavior from partners that I should walk away from. Oh, yes, yeah. Yeah, I see this a lot, Sam, and you can definitely build up the strength to come out of it. It just takes time and effort and commitment to yourself. Okay, let's keep going. We're only like a third of the way through. And so what does connection feel like? So knowing the difference between intuition and anxiety or trauma or worry. I get this question a lot. How do I tell what's my intuition and what is my anxiety or what is my trauma? And I always say that intuition is calm and steady and usually pretty quiet, at least at first. And anxiety, trauma, worry is erratic. It is loud. It is in your face. It is screaming because it's scared. Intuition isn't scared. And so connection also is knowing who you are. Just in general, you know, a lot of times we get asked that question when we're dating, right? Like, tell me about yourself. And if it's hard for you to come up with that on the spot, then you can definitely benefit from, you know, doing some work connecting to yourself. Recognizing when someone or something doesn't align with who you are. Okay, and that sort of goes with what you said, Sam, of accepting bad behavior. That's like, accepting bad behavior is like the next step from recognizing when someone or something doesn't align with you. So, you know, how many times I've done it before, plenty of times, where it's like, this isn't right. And I'm going to keep dating this person. I've definitely done that, I feel like. But recognizing that And then a sense of being the eye of the storm if things are chaotic around you. So when you're connected to yourself, you know that you've got your back no matter what. And so if things get chaotic, if things get weird, especially as parents, things get chaotic and weird, you still feel like you have your own back and you know who you are amidst all of it. And then finally knowing where your boundaries are and then not overstepping them yourself. You can overstep your own boundaries or changing them for others. You can always, always, always change your boundaries for yourself, but not changing them for others. Now, if you err on the side of avoidant attachment, I would say that the opposite is true. Definitely work on making your boundaries more flexible, but on your terms and within your safety or a little bit outside of your safety comfort zone, just for the sake of growth. And then finally, connection to yourself feels like being able to act on all of these things, right? You can have all of these things, but not be able to act on them. When you are deeply connected to yourself, there isn't a question of whether or not you're going to act on those things because you care about yourself that much because you've built that connection with yourself. The same way you would stick up for someone that you feel connected with as a friend or as a partner, you would stick up for them. You're connected with yourself, you would stick up for yourself. Okay, so the next C is clarity. And so what clarity does for you is it allows you to not get stuck in frivolous interactions. Sort of that whole like continuing to talk to someone that you know isn't really a good match just because. When you are clear on what you want in dating, you are able to not get stuck in those frivolous interactions. I get people who are like, oh my gosh, I have like 20 people in my inbox. How do I handle this? It's like, why do you want to handle that? That sounds like it's too much for you. Why are you interacting with so many people if that doesn't feel good for you? And so clarity also tells you where your boundaries are, where your lines are. When will you give someone your number? Will you give someone your number at all? When do you decide to meet up with someone? When is too long to wait to meet up with someone for you? It's different for everyone. I'm not a dating coach who's going to be like, you should wait X amount of time to do X, Y, and Z, because it's different for everyone. And there will be people whose timelines match up with each other, and then they will date, and then they will be together. But it's important to always have those conversations. That's what I will always say. Always talk about it. I think, was it last name Saunders? I think you asked about that in the app. So I will answer that later. And I think, Scotty, you may have also asked a question earlier that I'd like to address too. But yes, clarity also prevents you from sort of going with the flow. Let me know in the chat if you've ever had that conversation with someone where you're like, what are we doing? Or where are we going? Or whatever it might be. And they're like, oh, let's just go with the flow. And you're like, what does that mean? And then you start to learn that flow isn't where you want to go, but you're not clear on what you want. So you just kind of go with it like, oh, this is better than nothing. Like, I mean, at least I'm getting attention. But when you're clear on what you want, you can cut that off really soon, really easily. And then finally, clarity creates the confidence and certainty when you do choose someone, because you know you're clear on what you want. And so you're like, yeah, this person is great. Or these people, I'm also not a dating coach who's like super value imposing or whatever. Some people are poly and that is how they would like to live. And I, as a dating coach, do not try to stop them from that. I'm sorry, y'all, my title, what? Is it like white? Or did it just, I think it just disappeared. I don't even think it's, anyway. So clarity looks like knowing your own strengths, your own weaknesses, and what you need in a partnership, right? Like, can you list off, I hate this phrase because people use it a lot to sort of demean entire groups of people, whether it's usually it's like, oh, what do you as a woman bring to the table? But I've also heard, oh, what do you as a man bring to the table? But knowing what you do bring into a relationship is very important, because then you can know what is and is not compatible with someone else. Knowing your needs so that you can communicate them, being clear on who you are so that you can see where and communicate to the right person, see where you fit into the right person's life, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, let me know. Knowing what you don't want. Okay. I feel like a lot of us in our dating experience learn what we don't want, but keeping track of what you don't want so that you don't end up in a relationship with someone who has what you don't want, and admitting to yourself what you don't want. Like, I have dated many music producers. Okay. And I knew I didn't want that before I dated like 2 of them. Okay. So it's very important to know what you don't want, be clear on what you don't want, and actually stick to that. And we'll get to that in the 3rd C. Knowing what you do want, obviously. And I'll also get to that. I'll leave room to do an activity which I call the target list, where you can sort of learn how to list these things out in a way that is helpful on your dating journey. And then having full certainty whether you like someone or not. When you are clear on what you want, you're able to know whether you like someone or not. I don't know if you've ever been in that limbo space where I don't know if I really like this person. I mean, they're nice on paper. Okay, confession time. I watch a lot of Love Island, and I've been trying not to use my Love Island references, the UK version, not the US version. But if they tick all the boxes on paper and all that, but you still feel like you don't like them, when you're clear, you can just take a step back and recognize, okay, my intuition is telling me this person isn't right for me, even though they look good on paper. Okay, and then finally being grounded in your needs, right? So that goes along with not being pulled into someone else's flow. If it's not what you want and need out of a relationship, you can stay grounded in that and not feel like, okay, but if I don't go with what they want, then I might be alone. Like, so what? So what if you're alone? Because being dragged into someone else's needs doesn't feel good either. And being alone can feel good if you learn how to feel good being alone. Ryan, can you elaborate on what about that, as far as like what the specific question is? Because I would like to address that, the early stages of a new relationship.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you know the early stages of a relationship where you meet somebody and you think they're super and they think you're super, and you have your rose tinted goggles on and everything is super, and nothing they do is ever wrong or potentially can't be wrong. And then 10 years later, reality kicks in, kids kick in, and mortgages kick in, and you realize that you really didn't have anything in common at all, other than you're sort of living in a fantasy of being in love with the idea of being in love.
Yes. Yeah. So
I'm not sure what the question is.
well, I think I can speak to it a bit. There's a lot of times when we ourselves jump the gun, or not necessarily jump the gun, we get excited about a new relationship, right? That's fine. That's normal. That's great. That's a great feeling. I never want to take that away from people. But you can do that and see people for who they are, like immediately. A lot of times when we are in that early stage, and this is a brain chemistry thing too. Our brain releases dopamine when we start to fall for someone. And it's comparable to doing a drug. So
no, I totally agree with you. How would you actually try to counteract that? And I suppose it's you're right, it is dopamine, and it's oxytocin, and it's everything. And I suppose the best example of that is when a mother gives birth, or even when a father is given their child for the first time, they're automatically in love with that child, and it doesn't matter how brilliant other people's children are. Your child is still the best one ever, and you'll ultimately always love those. Similarly, then, if you were to use that same analogy to your new relationship, somebody you have found that you think is super, and then you start love bombing each other, and then you realize that that person wasn't as nice after all as they should have been. How do you actually try and get your brain chemistry to behave itself?
You can't. You can't, but what you can do is just be really intentional about your actions. Like really, like you said, love bombing each other, right? And so what are you contributing in that sort of phase of the early relationship? Because it is great, but what foundation are you laying for the future? Do you have the same values? Do you have the same morals, the same goals? Like what do you guys have the same vision for how you want life to be and how you want to feel as you go through life? Like just on your own, not even like how do you want to go through life? And then how does your person want to go through life? Before you guys met, like talk about that and see if it's a match. Because what happens when you're in that early stage is like, oh yeah, I can make mine match yours. I don't want to have more kids, but if you want to have more kids, I can kind of say that, but then 10 years down the line or 2 years down the line or whatever, when it's time to actually make that decision, it's like, I actually don't want to have kids because the dopamine's gone. And so now it's easier to be honest. But you have that conversation early on and you're really honest with yourself about, like I said, your needs, what you want out of a relationship and just out of life in general, then, and you're able to stay grounded in that and not necessarily settle. And I'm not saying don't compromise, but there are certain things like kids, like more kids, that's a big one. Finances, how do you handle finances? Things like that. There are certain things that you have to stay grounded in your own values and like, first of all, know it and stay grounded in it when you meet someone new. That's a good question, Daphne. What happens when you don't know? When you don't know, your clarity stuff. And when you're still figuring, sorry, y'all. When you're still figuring stuff out, should you just not date? I think, I would have to go more in depth with you on that one. I would say, how deeply do you not know? Do you not know, or are you not allowing yourself to accept what you already know? Because I do that to myself. I'm like, okay, like the kids one, it took me forever to admit that I don't want to have more kids because I felt like I do.
Probably didn't see you for that, Yeah. I think part of it is you always want to leave doors open for your own self, and possibilities open, but sometimes you just don't know, like what exactly you want out of the next relationship, those things.
Yeah.
Because I think for many people, you didn't intend to be where you are today. So you've not given it as much time and as much energy to think of this different path and what it could look like.
Yeah, that's fair.
Trying also not to be overly prescriptive,
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Don't want to go to a new person with a checklist of, sure, you're not, X, Y, or Z.
Yes, yeah. And so I'll get into that as well, because that is because I recommend a list, but my list is very not, it's not like the usual list. It's more values and morals based things that like you would need to just match with anyone really, like to even match with like a friend. Sometimes we meet friends and they like to go out all the time and you hate to go out. Like, why are we doing this? Depending on what the other compatibilities are. Like I do have friends that go out a lot, but like they invite me, but I always say no. But we match on other levels, so we're able to stay friends. I'll get into it. But yeah, that's true. If you don't know what you want, I'd say still date if you want, but do so lightly and cautiously. And maybe your clarity is that you don't know, and being honest and transparent about that. Like if someone's like, do you want more kids? You're like, I mean, honestly, I don't know. That's okay.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So important to communicate, to see, yes, if alignment is there on what you both want, instead of making assumptions and hoping for the best. Yes, I see that so often, making assumptions and hoping for the best. And I've done that as well. Because that's all I knew. I didn't know how to communicate my needs. I didn't know what I wanted or needed to be able to communicate it. Yeah. Yes, and knowing what you don't want is a good guide. Starting there, that could also help Daphne, just knowing what you don't want, starting there. Dating doesn't just help us get to know other people with like the goal of a relationship or marriage or whatever your goal is. It helps us get to know ourselves, our likes, our dislikes, and just how we interact in the world. A friend advised me that it takes 5 years after separation to fully be ready for a full relationship. I'm 3.5 years in and definitely don't feel ready for that next big relationship. Still enjoying dating though. I'm glad you're enjoying dating. I caution against putting time on stuff. I think people can go all in with healing and do things that are supposed to take 5 years and like 2 years or 1 year or whatever. I've seen people like crash course healing. And then I've seen people sort of like mosey around and sort of let time do its thing and take 10 years to do what is supposed to take 5 years. So everyone has their own timeline. So let's get into choice. Oh my gosh, we're running out of time. So I'll zoom through this. So these are just some things about choice. The people and oh, I'm sorry, did you want to say something? No? Okay. The people and experiences we choose are a direct reflection of, direct reflection of our relationship with ourselves. And so basically all the slide is saying is the way people interact with us and the interactions that we have, the interactions that we have can tell us a lot about how we relate in the world and how we relate with ourselves, right? And so if we're feeling like people aren't choosing us, a lot of times there's a place in our life where we aren't choosing ourselves. And I hate to hear that. I used to hate when people would say that to me. But in living it, it is very, very true. And it's not to say that it's your fault. I'm not saying it's your fault that people interact with you a certain way. I'm saying it can inform you as to where your pain points are and where you could use some healing. And so the things that you choose create your patterns. So you're choosing the same kind of person to date, you're choosing your type, right? And that type hasn't been working out for you, but that has created a pattern in your life. You choose a different type, a type that maybe might work better for you, then that will create a new pattern over time. Usually you have to make the same choice over and over again before it creates a pattern. That's just how our brains work. And so with choice, my advice is to stop choosing what you know is bad for you. I think that came up earlier. To stop ignoring your intuition. Okay, we also talked about that. Stop listening to what other people have to say about what is right for you. So with that friend comment, not to say that, you know, your friend was wrong or was trying to like tell you how to live or anything like that, but sometimes that does happen where people are like, oh, don't introduce your kids until X amount of months or whatever. But that may not be what works best for you. And then start choosing based on your target list, which we'll get into, and how you feel about someone. Okay. And always see yourself first, as in always choose yourself first, always get clear with yourself first, and always connect with yourself first. Okay, and so making your target list, I'm going to zoom through it. Separate it into 3 categories. You have your must-haves, your non-negotiables, your preferences and your wants, and then your bonuses. Okay, put your focus on how you want to feel while dating. All right, values and morals over physical features. So instead of, oh, I want someone who's tall or something like that, I get that one a lot. I want them to be like 6'3". Instead of that, think about how having someone tall around you makes you feel. Does it make you feel safe? Does it make you feel protected? Okay. Another one I get a lot, I want someone who's rich. But someone can be rich one day and then in 3 months spend all of their money and then they don't have any more money because they don't have good financial literacy. But you can pick someone who may not be rich today, but is very financially literate and, you know, values generational wealth. Okay. And so if you pick someone with those values, because those are the same as your values, then you're more likely to have a better match. Okay. So I want to leave you with that. I'll leave that on the screen in case you want to take a picture or whatever, but that is basically the end. So I want to open the floor for questions.
That is so, yeah, so much there, such helpful guidance. I've just taken a screenshot of that last slide. I feel like I'm going to pin it to my wall. Yeah, really great feedback. So on the Frolo Dating, actually, we have values on the profiles, relationship values that people find important, and for this reason, because, you know, like, I don't know, I mean, anyone can pick a nice, you know, picture of themselves or make them, or whatever, you know, but it's just like, we're all here, we're all single parents, you know, for whatever reason why we ended up getting here. We have like a little bit of life experience, I'm sure, that we've picked up along the journey. And I think, yeah, just being aware of the attachment styles that work, don't work, and somebody's values, if they're even aligned with yours or compatible, like it's a good starting point, even just knowing that, isn't it?
Definitely. And I always say, start with yourself. Like, always. That's where the confidence comes from. That's where the clarity comes from, because you are grounded in who you are. You don't feel like you have to be in a relationship, even though it's okay to want one. Like, yes, obviously, but it doesn't feel urgent. And so you're less likely to get into the mess that comes with urgency.
That is so true. And you can feel the difference, can't you, in what like you attract when you're in your own zone and you're just doing your thing and like being true to yourself, whatever that is, or looking at putting yourself first, like trusting the universe, and how it feels when it's the opposite of being in that kind of fear space of like, what am I going to do? Am I ever going to meet someone? Or, you know, it's just, it's, I feel like what you attract is very different.
Yeah. So I just got an anonymous question asking, I feel now that you can't be a nice person without it automatically being presumed that you are love bombing or the mask is going to drop anytime soon. So what is the difference between being a genuinely nice person as opposed to being an abuser love bombing someone? How will you ever know in the early days? So if you are speaking from you being nice to someone, right? Then you can't, unfortunately, you can't impact people's opinions. Like, you can't change their opinion of you or their whatever their issue is that is making them think that you are love bombing when you know you are not, you can't do anything about that. So you just have to let them go. And, you know, their assumption is going to make them lose out on a good person. The other way, if you are wondering if someone is genuinely nice or love bombing, time will tell. Don't let yourself get swept up in it, but you can still be accepting of it. It's like a balancing act. I had to do this with my current partner because he's a super intense Aries. And so I was like, is this love bombing? I don't know. But a good way to tell the difference between love bombing and genuine kindness, love bombing is a lot more generic. So like roses, the expensive jewelry, just like saying things that are sort of general or could be applied to anyone because they haven't really taken the time to get to know you. Whereas someone who's genuinely just like intensely pursuing you or intensely courting you or whatever word you want to use is going to have things that are personalized to you. So you mentioned you like sunflowers, they're going to give you sunflowers. And they're going to ask what other kinds of flowers you like because they don't just want to get you sunflowers. If you mention that like in passing that you like something, then they'll get that thing. Like my earrings that I'm wearing, yes, Scotty said they will know the details about you. My partner was wearing a bracelet and I complimented the bracelet and then he showed up like a week and a half later with matching earrings, like little stuff like that. Yeah, so I hope that helps. Did you discuss previous relationships? Yes and no. Definitely if asked, you can definitely discuss. I say keep it vague, not too vague, but like you don't have to give all the details. You don't have to talk about your past relationship for like 20 minutes on a date. But just sort of like, yeah, this happened and it sucked, or this happened and it was just this and that, and leave it at that. And if they ask more questions, then tell. But I know it can definitely turn people off to talk too much about an ex. Sorry, it's almost 4 and pickup is between 4 and 5. So I'm just getting text messages about that, but I've done any advice on what to put in your dating profile? Yes, yeah. So it depends on the app. I have a template that I sell a template, or I sell actually 3 tiers of dating app help. But one is just a template of what to say on different dating apps. Based on what, some of them, they only let you do prompts. And then you have like a short bio, and then some you have a long bio and there aren't any prompts. And I know Facebook dating lets you put like way too many prompts. But my basic advice, or my general advice, is to pick things that show your quirks, your differences, things that make you unique. And it doesn't have to be like unique in a big way. It can be something like, I'm trying to think, what did I put on mine? Show your personality, right? Like I can be sort of like, I'm just weird and sassy. And so my dating profile was like weird and sassy. I had my alignment. I don't know if any of you are into like D&D, but like my alignment is true neutral. And so I had that on there, and that attracted a lot of like people who are in the D&D world. And I was like, I'm taking this off because I don't want to date those guys and stuff like that. But
what's D&D?
Dungeons and Dragons. It's a role play dice game.
I have no idea, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, a lot of people don't necessarily know what it is.
Brianna, I'm just conscious of your school run. I don't want you to feel under pressure.
Oh, No, it's okay. They're walking, they're gonna be outside for a bit, and my son doesn't necessarily like when I pick him up right when they get outside. So
Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
I like to think it seems so daunting, not just like hard, but can't imagine getting to the point where there is the energy or time for another person, let alone an idiot that messes you about. Like you say, it doesn't. Yeah. Where do you start? Can you elaborate on that a bit, Jen? Like, what do you mean, where do we start? Thank you.
I'm kind of picking up from that question, just in case Jen doesn't feel like jumping in. Jen, just come in and speak for yourself if you feel like it. But I'm kind of picking up that it's more of a rhetorical kind of, where do we start at the end, you know, which I completely understand and relate to. But yeah, I guess as single parents as well, you know, when we're all busy and, oh, Jen says, sorry, little person sleeping. No worries. Okay, well, Jen, I'm just going to guess what I think you're saying, which is where do we start, you know, as a single parent when you're not even really sure, and, you know, I think you said about having the time and things. And yeah, I mean, I relate to that definitely. And I'm sure many people do. And I think, like, in a way, that's like the beauty of, and this is not a Frolo Dating sales pitch, by the way, but in a way, that's the beauty of, you know, dipping your toe into dating another single parent or testing it out, because I feel like people understand there's not that kind of, I don't know, not the same demands that, like, you know, can be put on when it's not a non-single parent, or just expectations, just purely because there isn't the same understanding of time and priorities and schedules and work and kids and everything. So, but yeah, I relate to what you're saying.
Yeah. And with the where do we start, even though it was rhetorical, I just say just start. Like, instead of figuring out, I do this in general spaces as well, not just in dating, but sometimes we get lost in figuring out where to start, to the point that it stops us from starting.
Yeah.
And so like I say, always start with yourself. I guess maybe that would answer the question. Start with you, getting clear on what you want. And then when you are ready, or when you feel like you do have some more time or some more energy, sometimes you have the time, but it's like, I'm just going to lay in bed. And so when you do, you know the direction you want to go in. Where can one meet decent humans?
Frolo Dating?
Yes. Yeah, well, she said, oh wait, hold on. Yeah, she said,
oh, you're US based, okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I always say, if you don't want to use the online space, which is like where a lot of people meet people now, but it can be overwhelming. It can be just like way too much at times, because the pool is so huge. Activities that you enjoy, right? But sometimes you have to be a bit more outgoing to do that. It's easier to send someone a message on an app, and not for everyone, but it feels easier usually to send someone a message on an app where you can sort of just like disappear if you need to, than actually walking up to someone in person and being like, hey, how are you? And so going out, tennis is coming to mind. I like to play tennis. So maybe, you know, you find a sport that you've wanted to get back into, but haven't in a while, go play. Or just local groups. I don't know if you guys have Meetup over there. The gym, yeah. Yep. But there's a website called Meetup, where and maybe you have an equivalent over there, but you can sort of join local groups based on interests, and go to those things as well. Oh yes, I think you asked that in the app. Struggle knowing to when and how to ask someone about wanting to make a situation or wait, oh my gosh. Situationship/relationship exclusive. Any advice? Yes. If you don't want to get into a situationship, you need to get very, very, very clear on where that line is for you and do not cross it whatsoever. Because once you cross it, you're in it. It's like when you break a big bill of, oh gosh, what is your currency? Your biggest currency bill, once you break it, it's just gone, right? That's the same thing with a situationship. Once you go across that line, you're in situationship town. It's really hard to get out. But knowing how to ask someone, I'd say don't get into it in the first place. If you know that you want an exclusive relationship, make that clear from the beginning. Like, oh, one of the things I used to have in my dating profile was that I'm not into casual anything really, but like casual sex especially. But that's me. That's me being clear on what I want. But putting it in your profile that you are looking for a relationship and then sticking to that, because there are people who will try to mosey you on into their flow and they say, yeah, like a relationship, cool. Like, let's just go with the flow and see what anytime someone says go with the flow, that's like a huge, I'll say it's an orange flag. Sometimes it's not a red flag, but most of the time it's a red flag. And then just ask. But when you ask, you have to be clear on what you want and sort of like, hey, this is getting into situationship space and I don't want to be in a situationship, or I don't want to be in a situationship anymore. And be prepared to walk, because that's setting a boundary. And if you don't walk and it's something that you don't want, then you're going to disconnect with yourself further, because you're going along with something that you deep down don't want for someone else.
Brianna, I'm going to just start closing things down now, because I feel like we could chat all night and the questions would just keep coming, and it's, you know, a lot of our most favorite topic as well. And I can see lots of thank yous coming in saying that was very powerful, super interesting. So yeah, it was really, really great. And we would love to have you back if you'd be up for it. And I've recorded the session as well, so we can share it after, and we'll share it with you. And yeah, maybe you could let everyone know where they can find you and connect with you on an Instagram.
Yes. So I'm on Instagram. My Instagram handle is at the bottom of the presentation. If that's still up, it should still be up.
Yes, it's there.
And yeah, I'm like on TikTok, but not really.
Okay, brilliant. Well, really, really great to see everyone. Thank you so much again, Brianna. And yeah, really, really valuable guidance there that you shared with us. And
thank you all for having me.
Of course. This is great. Of course. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed it, which it sounds like a lot of people did, maybe just pop a note on the feed or you know, on the meetup, just so that other people on the app you know that it's a good idea to join these expert meetups. So there's some good stuff in there. Cool. Okay, have a lovely evening, everyone.
You too.
Take care. Bye. Bye.